welcome to the special session of today, which is a conversation with our new Chief Science Advisor. Before that, I would like to express the sentiment in the room among the audience, many of whom have been advocating for a Chief Science Advisor for Canada for a long time, myself included in that. So let me express the excitement and happiness of this audience, at least, for this position, for you, Dr. Nemer, to be appointed to this position, and obviously a huge level of expectations that hopefully will be adjusted over time in terms of the mandate of the position. So CSBC hosted Minister Duncan in 2015 when she was 2 weeks into her job as Minister of Science. We are so pleased and honored to host the Chief Science Advisor, who has been only 5 weeks into her job, and I won't keep you waiting. And without further ado, please welcome the new Canada's Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Mona Nemer.
Thank you very much, Merdad. I'm going to take a seat. I understand this is a conversation, but I do want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for the invitation and mostly to congratulate you on an incredible conference. I think that the success of this conference is testimony to your hard work, your determination, and I think it's a lesson for all of us about passion, hard work, and determination, but also about great ambitions. Alors, hier, j'ai eu le grand plaisir d'être présente à la soirée. J'espère que vous y étiez tous. C'était une soirée très remarquable. Et ce qui était encore plus remarquable que la soirée, le discours de la gouverneure générale, la présence de la ministre, c'était vraiment pour moi la présence de tellement de jeunes dans la salle. I was really pleased yesterday to see so many young people, and by young I mean really young, like students, not young investigators, with all due respect. And these students who are passionate about science policy, passionate about Canada, and who want to make a difference. So congratulations to all of you. This gave me a lot of energy, and it actually is now a humbling and someone's nervous experience to be sitting here answering your questions. So on we go. First impression was of a great country that is welcoming, that is diverse, and I think that Canada has remained a welcoming and diverse country. And I hope that we always remain welcoming to everyone. I think this is our strength, and this is also our opportunity for global leadership.
Excellent, thank you. And for your information, I am an immigrant myself, so there you go. So, and now going back to your scientific background, could you tell us a little bit about that and highlights of your career in science?
Yeah. So, I guess everyone here in the room, they know what they want to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up. In fact, I did not necessarily want to do science. I loved science. And then at one point, I decided I'm going to pursue science, but I couldn't do it because in the school where I was in Lebanon, it was an all-girls school, and there were no opportunities really to go in a scientific stream. So my first act of engagement was to get the school to change its curriculum and actually create a science stream so that girls could pursue a scientific career. And then after that, my parents wanted me to go into medicine, but I was very afraid of blood and didn't like biology. I'm sorry to say this, given that I spent most of my life as a molecular biologist. So I went into chemistry. And I did my PhD also in chemistry at McGill. My PhD taught me a lot of things. First of all, it was in an area that was not even sort of interdisciplinary at the time. It was an area that didn't quite exist, that of synthesizing DNA and RNA, which of course had a great impact later. But at the time, it was curiosity driven, and people said, like, why do you want to do this? After that, I did a stint at industry because I figured that it's enough of being a low-paid grad students. I don't know if there are grad students here that feel the same. So you see, some things don't change. And so I went and worked in a biotech company, and then I decided actually to go back to university and retrain, and this time retrain in molecular biology and genetics. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to develop, to do medicinal chemistry and develop drugs to fight disease. But if I didn't understand the biology, the chemistry was not sufficient for me. So basically, I went back into biology to go back into chemistry, but I stayed in biology. Okay. And that's how life goes.
That's great, thank you. And could you tell us your previous involvement in policy, in administration, and how was your engagement with policy prior to when you were a scientist?
I guess my first engagement was perhaps in 1997, when to my great surprise, I received the agenda of the Council of the Medical Research Council. I said, oh, what's this? It must have come by mistake. Well, it turns out that I had been appointed to the Council of the Medical Research Council. And it's an interesting story also for the young ladies. My reaction was to go and see at the time Dr. Bois, who used to be the president of the Medical Research Council, for those who remember, and tell him, I think there was a terrible mistake. I don't think I belong to this group. He said, no, you just go and do it, you'll be fine. So anyway, I was the youngest, most activist, perhaps, person on the council, and it was the time when funding for research was really at its bottom. Some things are cyclical, so just hang in there. And basically, it was the time when Henry Friesen, a great visionary leader in Canada, decided that we need to change from the Medical Research Council to CIHR. And I think I saw in the audience the first president of CIHR, Alan Bernstein, somewhere. There he goes. So that was my first, involvement in policy. And it was very rewarding because I saw the immense impact actually of it had. It wasn't easy. You don't just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to change the world, and it happens. So you just have to stay at it.
Thank you. That's true. And so now going to more policy-related questions, what do you think is the value of using data to make evidence-based decision-making?
What do you think the value of oxygen is?
So could you provide a few examples?
Yeah.
Why science is important in policymaking?
I mean, I just like to start, first of all, evidence-based is data, and when we talk also about a scientific approach to policy, as you've well defined over the years, it's the information, it's the technical content, but it's also an approach. It's an approach of asking properly the question, of gathering the data in support of this, and coming to a conclusion with the bulk of the evidence. So it seems to me if you want to have good policy, if you want to chart a good future for the country, that's the only way to go, because if you don't go this way, you're going to be putting out policies that are inadequate and that actually lead to harm.
Thank you. And now moving forward to the Chief Science Advisory job, why you were interested in this job for the first place?
Well, like I said, I've always had this sense that you need to give back, you need to contribute. If we want the system to continue, we have to do our share. As a scientist and as an educator, as a teacher, I took great joy in mentoring the students and seeing all my PhD and masters and undergrad go on to great positions. But if we don't contribute to the system, why am I training them? Mm-hmm. So at one point, it's a must. We all have to do our share. And I remember telling my colleagues, you don't get much by just being in the opposition all the time. You have to participate, and you have to change the system sort of from within. So that was a little bit my motto. And the chief science advisor position is one that I strongly believe in. I think that this is one that's important for the country, for the future, and it was, the right time for me to try it and see if I can contribute.
Thank you. And now, could you explain to us what is the role and the mandate of Chief Science Advisor for Canada?
So Merdad is telling me, okay, what is it that you really do? Well, my mandate, I guess, is clear and is posted on our website and has been articulated by the Prime Minister, and it is to provide scientific advice to him, to the Minister of Science and other cabinets, and to ensure that evidence is taken in the decision-making process. So that's an important part. Another very important part is that of convener, engaging in really bringing together the intramural, extramural scientific community within Canada and also with the world, because science doesn't stop at borders. We all know this. And I think that over the years, somehow we have managed to develop silos between us. We don't have walls on our borders, but we have silos between us. And I think that that's something that we need to address. And I look forward to working with everyone in this room and everyone in the country, for that matter, to bring down the silos.
And if I may, how would you advise the Prime Minister or the Cabinet on the issues? And if they don't accept your advice, what would happen?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, of course. I'm going to give a great advice, so then listen. No, but seriously, look, on day one, the Prime Minister told me, I want you to worry about the evidence. There are enough people worrying about the politics. I'll take care of the politics, you take care of the science. I thought that was very, comforting and encouraging. That doesn't guarantee, everything. But the way I approach things is that when they ask for, say, advice, there's not going to be one option. My job is to make sure that the data is there in support of a conclusion, and then from the conclusion, there are policy options. And the policy options will take into account technical evidence, societal evidence, they're all science, right? Evidence-based. And then there will be options. I think that, if I may, at least myself, I get, I would say, irritated when politicians alter the evidence in support of decision making. I think when you can say that we know that this is, good for this, but bad for that. But the weight of the evidence, is this one for now. But we're going to mitigate. We're going to do something else. We're going to review in a few years. So I don't think it's a, one or and black and white.
Right.
Maybe I'm naive.
No, that's good. No, fair enough. And so you are new in the position. Perhaps we would like to know in the coming months, what are your priorities, perhaps, that you have in mind?
Well, right now my priority is to listen, to get advice, to receive advice from all the stakeholders, from government, from science leaders within government, the deputy ministers, the scientists themselves, the extramural community, and I think that we have to work at this together. Everybody knows my mandate, and I think it's going to be based on the sort of collective advice, and of course the government agenda is going to dictate certain things. That's the reactive part of my mandate. But there's a proactive part, and we have to look together and see what are the issues on the horizon that we should start thinking about and developing some advice or some other measures that we can live with.
Okay. I understand that you were in Boston recently and to be introduced to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And could you tell us how was like that to be there as a chief science advisor? What was the impression of Americans of this new position, and how you were received it?
Well, I was very well received. I don't have to tell this audience that the United States and our colleagues in the United States are our closest collaborators. I think that a good 45% or something like this. I think we have colleagues from actually our mission in Washington who can give the exact numbers. But about half of the publications that are co-authors with international scientists and Canadian are with US scientists. So there is a deep relationship, and that continues. What really struck me this time, I went to Boston, and I went last week, I guess, to Washington. I visited with the National Academy of Science and with the AAAS and the National Science Foundation as well. I think that everyone, I would say, is looking up to Canada for leadership. I think that the United States, like other countries that have also reached out to us, our European friends, I was speaking with the European Commission as well, they see Canada as on the right path. Given the international context, I think that we have an opportunity to lead, and that people also expect us to lead. So it was a very, very encouraging trip, and actually I've been immensely encouraged by the support received from the international community. So I think that we need to act on this.
Excellent, thank you. And I know that you have been reaching out to various stakeholders domestically and internationally. And could you tell us why it is important to be connected to science and policy communities around the world?
Well, again, you know, the science doesn't stop at borders, and I think science policies, again, there are the different systems. Other countries are perhaps have a longer track record or history of science policy and of engagement between scientists, scientific organizations, and the government. And I think that we shouldn't be arrogant. We have things to learn. Things on the to do and on the not to do as well. So I think this is very important, and it's also an opportunity to signal to our friends and our collaborators abroad that Canada is open for collaborations. Canada is open, basically, to work with you on issues that are important to everyone. I mean, you cannot tackle environment, you cannot tackle multi-drug resistance, you cannot tackle the refugee crisis, one country. So we have to work together with the world.
And my last question, as you may know, that CSBC is heavily based on the volunteer work, and those are mostly graduate students, postdocs, and early career researchers from across the country. And now they are seeing you, listening to you, and seeing you as a role model, as an accomplished scientist, as a woman, as an immigrant, and who have gone to very far in the career. And how should they take as a lesson from this life story, as a journey? What is your message for them?
Well, first of all, I want to say how humbled and you know, I don't know the words. I'm very touched by the outpouring support and by the hundreds, without exaggerations, and hundreds of messages received, especially from students, graduate students, high school students, ordinary citizens, and also from everyone. So some days I wake up and I say, this is just so much pressure. The expectations are so high and I'm gonna disappoint. But you know what? In fact, I want you to keep your expectations high, because it keeps me on my toes. As scientists,
this is recorded.
Yeah, well, that's fine. You know, I mean, as scientists, we always, you know, have ambitions. We set the bar high, and sometimes we reach it, sometimes we don't. But we do our best. But if the bar is not high, I think it's you know, we're not gonna reach high. So, so by the same token, my message is, you know, set your ambitions high. You know, dream big, and you know what? you'll probably be able to realize a lot of your dreams. But if you don't dream big, you'll never realize anything big. So dream, but be also a pragmatic dreamer. Work hard and be determined and passionate, just like you did with CSBC.
Thank you. Thanks very much. That was excellent ending. Thank you. So the purpose of this session is also to provide you with the opportunity to ask your questions and raise your points if you want to. There are 2 mics here, and now we are opening up to the floor. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free. The floor is yours.
You're going to direct the questions?
Sorry?
You will direct the questions?
Yes. No, it's all to you. Anyway, you can just go ahead. Please.
Hi, Pierre Bilodeau with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. The question I have is really a rule of engagement from SBDAs. So what can we expect in terms of collaboration or interaction between the Chief Science Advisor and the science-based organization within the federal government?
Well, thank you for this question. As you know, the piece about intramural science is a big part of the mandate. And I just came out of a meeting where I was, starting to put in place the plan to go and visit the different government labs and engage with the scientists. I will be meeting, I believe, also shortly with all the ADM science and the chief scientists of the different departments, but I also want to go and speak with the scientists and see the facilities. So I'm hoping it will be, a close relationship, and I'm here to help.
Thank you, Merdad. My name is Engelhardt, Rainer Engelhardt. I'm the former ADM and Chief Science Officer of the Public Health Agency, former meaning I'm retired now. Congratulations, by the way. Taking that position has been the wish and the hard work of, I think, many people working behind the scenes in Canada. Question I have is, do you also see yourself in your role as being, I guess, the face or the interlocutor for Canada's science with the public at large, in the context that we are concerned about the non-literacy of our Canadian public?
I think it would be too presumptuous of me to say that I will be the face of science. I will be one of the faces of science, and there are many of them, many in this room, many everywhere. I think that collectively we need to realize and start doing something about the engagement with the public, about the science literacy. We heard it yesterday from our Governor General. But I think that it's beyond the science literacy, the language of science, people appreciating the science in their everyday. I'm starting to think that we need to explain the methodology of science so that people are not septic, so that people don't think that you can believe whatever you want with the same data. So I think that we have a lot of work to do ahead of us, but I think we need to do it, and we need to do it not for us as scientists. We need to do it for the public, we need to do it for the country. I think it's essential for democracy that the public understands the content, but also the methodology of science.
Question yet.
That's okay. All right. So sincere congratulations. I think it's wonderful news. My name's Louise Boudreau. I'm with the National Research Council. And I guess my curiosity is such that I wonder for yourself, when it comes to the end of your tenure and your mandate, when you look back on what you've achieved, what is the needle that you hope to have moved?
Well, first of all, I say, and I'm repeating it here, my first objective is to make sure that there is another Chief Science Advisor in Canada. Okay, so I think that's very important, and we all need to work collectively to make this office a success, to demonstrate value added to the public and to government. So that's going to be essential and critical. After that, there are, there are different needles in the watch, especially the modern ones. There are different ones. And if we've managed collectively to move also the needle on the science literacy part, on changing the engagement between the scientists and the government, and scientists wherever they are, I think that I will look back and think this has been a success.
So you talk about the importance of integrating evidence into our decision-making processes in government. I think that this is very important. I think probably many of the people, if not most in this room, feel that it's also important. I would like to ask you, if evidence-based decision-making is what we're working towards, what is the current approach that we have? How does that need to change? And what is the interface between our current approach and evidence?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is a very important and profound, actually, question, and one that it's like whenever we say we want to improve the system or change the system, the question is the system that broken now? So I think we have to be careful not to suggest that there is no evidence that goes right now in the policy and the decision making. I think that what we were seeing is that the decision-making process that touches on complex issues now requires another approach to the gathering of evidence. It's within the government, it's many departments. I'll give you an example. I was at an ocean roundtable this past weekend. If you want to deal with oceans, you have to deal with climate change, you have to deal with fisheries, you have to deal with pollution, metals, natural resources, you name it, right? You have to deal with. So it's now how do we integrate, even within government, these different departments, because there is evidence that comes up, there's no question that the scientists and the science department provide the evidence, but it's really looking horizontally at bringing it all together and also sifting through the evidence and translating it. So sometimes the evidence is available and the experts understand it, but policy makers are generalists, they're not experts. So we need to translate what does it mean, this into a language and into something that policy people can take and run with it. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's that horizontality that we need to establish mechanisms, to feed into this.
Ron Friedman from Research InfoSource. This might be premature to ask, but of course you're not Canada's first Chief Science Advisor. Arthur Cardy before you and other people have had similar roles. So have you had a chance to think about what you're going to do differently than Arthur did to have an impact?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's and I think we have to be careful because what we do also has to be, adapted to our times, right? I'm not saying that when Art Carty was there, the situation maybe was a bit simpler, but the complexity of the issues and the legislation facing government, I think, has taken on another proportion, right, in terms of whether it's health, whether it's environment, and so on. If the question is whether I'll be, speaking with previous Chief Science Advisor or equivalent, the answer is absolutely yes. I've reached to them here in Canada and abroad, and I think we just need to be, to understand what didn't work, not repeat mistakes, but again, maybe what he did that didn't work, if I do it, it will work, just because the times are different.
Yes, hi. Brad Wallace from Defense Research and Development Canada. I really love to see that we're talking about evidence-based decision-making, but one of my concerns is that many of our abilities to gather the evidence we need have either been removed or weakened or threatened. Now, if you are asked to weigh in on something for which the evidence perhaps could be gathered but isn't because it's, the funding or something was shut down or some previous government might have been not so happy with it. What would you see yourself perhaps doing in that sort of situation, realizing that you're not really supposed to be an advocate for science as such?
Well, yeah, this is very important because the government has asked me, the Minister of Science has asked me to look at the mechanism, to incorporate evidence. And for me, it starts at the presence of the evidence, or at gathering the evidence, at storing the evidence, at having the evidence accessible. So everything that you said is very important, and these are all the type of issues that I'm going to be looking at. And they're gonna be different, right, from maybe one sector to the other, but I think there are also some general principles that as a country maybe we can adopt and that we can, be wary of. I think that, one of the issues, okay, so if you have the data but you don't have anybody who can sift through the data, if you don't have the talent to carry on the evidence-based approach, we're not ahead than just not having data anyway. So we need to look at the whole system, at the integration of the people, at getting the data, where the data is stored, how it's accessible, and how it's used.
Thank you. Milena Rajkovska from the European Commission. Congratulations on your appointment. I'm sure that you have a lot on your agenda in terms of domestic challenges and things that you have to do at home. But as you mentioned at the beginning, you're also aware that there is something to be done also at the international stage. And honestly, looking at the room right now, here today, and also knowing what's going on in a little bit of Canada and also somewhere southern of your border, I have the feeling that something is brewing in Canada for science policy. There is a momentum here, and there is a possibility to harness it and this support, and maybe to try to pass some messages and to try to put a mark on the international stage. I'm not speaking only as you, as a scientist, but also as a Canadian science policy, but in general of science in terms of influence on our society and our policies. What are your concrete plans to do this? Is this on your radar? And how do you plan to cooperate with partners as us in the European Union, as well as others in some other countries who are also trying to increase the importance of evidence into the conversations that we're having nowadays, into the debate with the society and with policymakers? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for traveling from Europe to be here with us. I think this is testimony to the success of this conference, and for sure, the international engagement is a very important piece. It's on my radar screen. As I said, I've already started engagements. Hopefully, I will be going somewhere to Europe before the end of this year. As a scientist, I believe deeply in the importance of collaboration across the world. Science, again, doesn't stop at a border, and I'll be looking forward to working on, collaborative large projects. We have granting council that are interested as well in engaging internationally. I believe Minister Duncan will be giving a speech tonight, and I don't know, maybe she will also speak about the international. But all this to say that, we're very sensitive and committed as well to engaging internationally.
Hi, let me share my congratulations to you. Your coordination role within the federal government science-based departments and agencies, I think, is really important. They're very siloed sometimes, and some of the challenges that the politicians have to face around policy cut across a lot of those lines. So your role there is really important. If there's a decision coming from the policymakers that they need, it might take a long time to gather the evidence and a longer time than they have to make the decision. Is there a mechanism now for them on the policy side to alert you to some of the issues that they see coming down the pipe so that you could be doing some conversations across the departments with the sciences and the other community as well, just so you can prepare for that time when they, hey, Mona, we need this fast, and you're prepared? Is there a mechanism for that?
Well, I mean, the mechanism for that is being in touch with the various, with the Prime Minister's office, with PCO, of course, with the Minister of Science, and basically being at tables, not a table, to know what's going on. So I think that's a very important point that you raise for the Chief Science Advisor office to be really well integrated or connected with these various places, and that's exactly what we're doing. The last thing that we need is to have the Chief Science Advisor's office as a silo. I think we will be totally ineffective. We can write reports after reports. I don't think that, like you say, they may be at just like not in sync with the issues that government is facing. So far there are a lot of things that are happening that preceded me. So that's good because it gives me time to breathe, and it gives everyone time to, to say what's on the legislative agenda and what other, issues are brewing. But the expectation is also from me to have some, in a way, forecasting and be prepared. And this is where I'm going to need the entire community, the scientists within government, outside government, the science policy groups, and we're going to work at this together.
Thank you. For the interest of the time, for the interest of the time, we take 2 questions from here and 1 question from there, and then we wrap up. And my apologies for that, because the concurrent sessions will start very soon after this. Please, here.
Nadim Adi from Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Scholars. Seeing as usually disruptive technology usually outpaces legislation in most cases, what would Canada do to make sure that we attract the best of that technology and be the trailblazer on a global level?
Well, this is the question, about talent, and then we need to be competitive on the world stage. We need to be viewed as the place for innovators, for disruptive technology, for scientists, for scholars to come here. That has implications for all of us. It has implications, of course, for our government of ensuring that we create the environment that is supportive for these innovators, because talent is mobile. They just go everywhere. So I don't know how to answer your question, but that's something we all need to make sure that we remain competitive as a country to attract the best talent from around the world and to keep the best talent also in Canada.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm between an undergrad in engineering science at U of T and a master's in sustainable energy policy at Carleton. I watched your recent interview, your and Minister Duncan's recent interview with Steve Paikin on the agenda, and got really excited when you were championing the need for multidisciplinary research funding. So my question is, how do you plan to go about doing that, and how soon will it be available for grad students?
Thank you very much for asking the question, because now it's going to be noted, for everyone to see and watch. I profoundly believe in multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. I lived it, and I saw what it's like, not to belong to any community and not to be able, actually not to know where to put your application in. And that has to stop, because That's not the way things work. Unfortunately, it's the way our universities, in many cases, still work, and our funding system. Hopefully, as you saw, Minister Duncan has struck this coordinating committee. It's a first step, and you can be sure that I will be the voice for, for pushing and championing multidisciplinarity and making sure that people don't have to ask the questions. Do I go here? Do I go there? And if I'm doing medical devices and biomedical engineering, do I belong to CIHR or to ANSWER? And then if I'm doing policy, do I belong to SHRC? This has to stop. Sorry, I don't have the check yet.
I need that. Thank you.
Claudie Gosselin avec le Conseil de recherche en sciences humaines du Canada. Alors, je voulais vous remercier d'abord d'être venu nous parler, puis de nous avoir parlé un petit peu en français. Et puis, ma question suit en fait sur le thème de la multidisciplinarité. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous parler un peu plus de la façon dont vous allez intégrer les sciences humaines dans vos activités et puis des défis et des promesses que vous voyez à cette multidisciplinarité au sens large?
Merci de me poser la question en français et de me permettre de m'exprimer aussi en français. Alors, écoutez, moi, j'ai essayé d'être claire. Quand on parle de sciences, c'est toutes les sciences. Les sciences naturelles, les sciences de la vie, les sciences sociales et les sciences humaines. Je crois que c'est l'intégration de toute façon de toutes ces sciences-là qui vont donner à la fin des politiques publiques qui sont, qui sont dans le bien de la société et ce que la société aussi attend de nous. À travers les siècles, il y a eu, et puis on l'a mentionné tout à l'heure, il y a eu des moments où la science était en avance de la société et puis évidemment ça a eu des impacts sur la législation. Donc moi quand je parle de science, c'est toutes les sciences. Et quand je parle de l'approche scientifique, c'est comme j'ai dit, c'est l'approche vraiment impartiale, objective, de poser la question, d'avoir les évidences et tout. Donc je peux vous assurer et je peux vous rassurer que j'ai une vision très inclusive de la science. Et par ailleurs, dans mon ancienne vie à l'Université d'Ottawa, un des domaines qui était très près de mon cœur, c'était au fait l'intersection des sciences dures et de la société. Donc, je veux dire, on le voit là, c'est des clichés de le répéter, mais c'est une intersection qui est très importante et c'est une intersection qui interpelle à la fois les humanistes et les sciences de la vie et les sciences naturelles. Donc, ça, c'est ma vision.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Nemer. Alors, merci beaucoup pour accepter notre invitation de participer à cette conférence. Et maintenant, nous espérons que vous voir à la conférence à l'année prochaine. Alors, nous espérons le chance and best of luck for your work.
Merci.
Consider us as your supporters of the office of the work that you do and look forward to see you in the next year, in the next conference.
Ben, merci beaucoup. Puis l'année prochaine, ça va être le 10e anniversaire.
10e anniversaire.
Mais comme vous avez l'habitude de trouver toujours des gens qui viennent juste d'arriver, je me demande c'est qui que vous allez avoir l'année prochaine, qui vient juste d'arriver.
C'est un excellent. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Merci à vous tous. Merci. Merci.